To get started with Padlet, the first thing you need to do is to email either myself, Mary Murphy, or Tim Sanderson, who is based over in Frenchay, and we will add you to the education license purchased by ACE for use. You can go into the Padlet generic website and sign up for a free account, but that account is going to be quite restricted. So please remember to go through the UE domain, the UE login page for Padlet. Padlet will send that to you with a username and password, but I'm just going to type it in here just to reinforce it. It's uwe.padlet.org. So uwe.padlet.org, and that will take you to the dashboard. Now we'll look at some of the functions and some of the bits and pieces here in another video. Essentially, to get going with it and to start making a Padlet, you need to click on the Make a Padlet button. You will see a couple of Padlets here by various different staff members. Those staff members chose, when they were making the Padlet, to make it organisation-wide for various reasons. In some cases, it's because they just wanted other people to be able to see how they'd used Padlet. In some cases, it was a Padlet that was made for everybody in the organisation. So don't panic initially if you think everybody's going to be seeing your work. There's a very clear set of steps to make sure that your Padlet remains a secret until you choose to share. So clicking on the Make a Padlet tab here will bring you to the templates. Now there's a couple of templates, different layouts for your Padlet. It's worth having a little play. Some tasks and some Padlets work better if they're made with a particular template, but your purpose is what dictates that. So you need to kind of play around and figure out which one suits you, which one suits the task that you're addressing. Personally, 90% of what I've used is Shelf. Shelf just organizes content really nicely and it packs things into vertical columns. We'll see that in a second. So I'm going to select Shelf. And the first slightly disconcerting thing is that Padlet gives me an optional, it gives me a range of templates to use, but it always starts me off with something, and quite often they're a little bit eye-watering. So we can change this template in a second. And it also gives you a sort of default title and a little bit of information. This particular one says, My Radiant Shelf and Made with Serendipity. And that's a little disconcerting as well. But just to show you that that happens every time you make a Padlet. So if I come back out to my dashboard and I go to make a new Padlet and I'll select Shelf again, it gives me another option for my background and it says My Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Shelf Made with Big Dreams. So we need to nip that in the bud straight away. We need to make that look a little bit more professional. You'll notice that it gives me an option to name my first column here. So these are the columns, the titles that I'm going to be asking people to respond to. The settings button over here will access a lot of the kind of setup and how I want to use Padlet. The first thing I want to do is get rid of my Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Shelf. So I'm going to highlight that, but you'll notice that I can't delete it. Now, for all its fabulousness, Padlet does have a few little clunky things in there, and this is the first you'll encounter. I can't change the title or the description on this until I've given my first column a name. So I'm going to call this column Take a Photo, and I'm going to hit Save. Now that I've saved a column, I can go back into my settings and I can change this. So I'm going to call this Staff Development 2019, and my description is going to be Agile Apps Training Session. And you'll see that that has changed over here. I also want to change the wallpaper. So if I click on the orange wallpaper that's selected, I get all of my wallpapers, all my options up here. At the very top, I can add my own. So I can upload an image from my computer. So you could make a template that has, or wallpaper that has an icon or a logo embedded. But there are some nice simple ones to choose from in their presets. So I particularly like Notebook. It looks nice and simple. I like Blueprint. And there's one down here called Snow or Cloud. Just sort of slightly off-white. Some of these ones are really offensive. We don't want the Padlet to be distracting from the information that's going on the Padlet. So just be a little careful with using those ones. So for today, I'm going to go with Blueprint and I'm going to click Save. And I can choose to display the author's name above each post. So sometimes it's quite useful. Sometimes it can be a little exposing. People are less willing to contribute to a Padlet if they know that they're not going to be anonymous. So it depends on the function of the Padlet. I'm going to leave this blank so that this particular one will be anonymous. And moving down to the next option, I can make my new posts appear first in this column or last. And what that means is that as I add posts, which you'll see in another video, the latest one will either stay at the bottom and keep moving down, or it will stay at the top and the older posts will move down. My advice, having done this a lot, is leave the new posts till last, because people will not realize that the older posts have dropped off the screen and they have to scroll to find them. So I would put the new posts to last. You can also add in a little tool that allows people to comment on each other's posts. So it can be a bit like a discussion, like a web discussion forum. And you can have reactions. Now, reactions are quite useful if you're using a Padlet to kind of engage students in a large lecture situation. Just even adding the like function so that they can like each other's comments really can just raise the energy levels in the room. If you had a group and you wanted to vote on where we locate our next meeting, or what time would you like to meet up, and there's 7 people in the group, you could have a numeric score. You can have a five-star rating on something. So it's a good way of making decisions quite quickly. I'm just going to leave the like button on there. And moving down, the last little bit here is I can set it up so that as a moderator, I have to approve posts before they appear on the Padlet. I would advise you not to do that because you lose that really instant buzz that you get when you start to see the posts appearing live on the screen. Everything has to come to me and I have to read through it and click approve. But there may be a situation, for example, if you're working with small children, if you are working with a particularly sensitive subject, you may want to set it up so that you are moderating the posts before they go up. In the similar kind of area, you have a filter profanity button, and what that does is if Padlet recognizes lots of swear words in lots of different languages and it replaces them with emojis. The problem is if you make students aware of this, you lose 10 minutes of your class where they all play around with typing in bad words to see the emojis pop up. I've never had a student in the 2 years I've been using Padlet put up an offensive word. It's something quite controlling about the fact that everybody can see it. Students tend to behave themselves. So it's there if you want to use it. I would advise not to. So that's my Padlet set up. I'm going to hit save. And I'm now ready, if I close this area down, to begin to build my Padlet and to add my content.